your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series where your man, Louie T, aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2020 NFL Draft using our brand new grading scale from 5 to 1. Each pick will be assessed a score, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. We will then tally up all the scores from that team's draft, divide by the number of selections made, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating 2 things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Detroit, next, Lions, next, Det. You get where I'm going with this. As a matter of fact, the next team up in the series is none other than the Detroit Lions. Now, I've been very critical of this organization ever since they fired Jim Caldwell. Haven't felt like they've made too many good moves since then. This one hasn't proven to be fruitful to this point. He's getting another year in Matt Patricia. We'll see how that goes. We'll see if Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia's quest to turn the Detroit Lions into the Detroit Patriots is a success or not. But they continued on their initiative this offseason. This was a very busy offseason. It smelled and reeked of desperation of, look, this is our last-ditch effort to save our jobs. Let's go out and get as many guys as we feel like we need to get us a winning record, a trip to the postseason, and an opportunity to do this for 3 or 4 more years. So they went out and they signed just about everybody under the sun you could imagine. A lot of them ex-Patriots, whether you're looking at the defensive side, which is where they spent the bulk of their money, going out and getting ex-Patriots like Deron Harmon and Danny Shelton and Jamie Collins. They also spent money at the cornerbacks position after trading away Darius Slay. So they went out and they got Desmond Trufant. They spent a ton of money on that side of the ball. They turned around, they went out and got a couple of free agents on the offensive side of the football, quality backup for Matthew Stafford and Chase Daniel. They also went out and got Geronimo Allison from the Green Bay Packers. The list goes on and on. Again, a ton of money spent by the Lions in free agency to try to help bolster this team. Again, on the defensive side, they went out and they signed Reggie Ragland as well. So again, the list is long, but I felt like it was a necessary evil. They needed to kind of change up some things and continue to turn over this roster if they're going to have a chance to win with the guys that they feel like they need to have in order to get that done. They went out and got them. Let's see if it proves to be fruitful for them. But this draft, I thought free agency was busy. I thought the draft was specific. Like they had specific positions that they were targeting in the draft and that they went after, and they doubled down on a couple of them. And so we'll talk about those as we take a look at this 9-player collection that the Lions were able to assemble, and we'll break them down and see how they were able to shake out. And so let's take a look at this 2020 draft of the Detroit Lions. I've got breakdowns for each and every single one of those 9 selections made, as you see in front of you. I'll be reading from my write-ups on every single player, including the first of which, first round, 3rd overall selection, cornerback out of the Ohio State University, Jeffery Okuda is the selection to get this Lions draft kicked off. 3rd pick overall, the number 1 corner on my board and probably most people's board out there. I had a top 5 grade on him and he went 3rd overall. I thought that's what was going to happen. I think most of us felt like that was going to happen. 6'1", 205 pounds, 33-inch arms, ran a 4.48 at the combine, 1 tackle for loss, 2 forced fumbles, 9 pass breakups, 3 INTs in 14 games in 2019. For his career, 1 tackle for loss, 2 forced fumbles, 18 pass breakups, 3 INTs in 41 games. So you look at those numbers and they don't really jump out at you per se. And this has been the mantra of Ohio State, and this has been the model of somewhat the last decade or so. No team has had more first-round selections in the last decade at the cornerback position than the Ohio State Buckeyes, 14 to be exact. I think the next closest team has like 5 or 6. So, I mean, they're head and shoulders above anyone else in terms of first-round picks at the cornerback position. And, you know, guys are willing to wait their turn at Ohio State, and that's what Jeffery Okuda did, essentially. I mean, 1 year of starting experience. Marshon Lattimore did the exact same thing, kind of bided his time, waited for his turn, and then when he got that opportunity, he took full advantage of it and dominated and parlayed that into a first-round selection by the New Orleans Saints. So Jeffery Okuda, not much different from Marshon Lattimore in that sense. I'll give you my player comp for him a little bit later on. But if you're going to use a scheme and deploy a scheme that essentially plays man-to-man coverage across the board, you need elite shutdown corners like a Jeffery Okuda to run the system that Matt Patricia wants to run. And so it's imperative that you have a guy or two like that. In the case of the Patriots over the years, they've usually had at least one, whether it was going back a ways, Ty Law, or then Asante Samuel, or now Stephon Gilmore. They've always had that alpha at the cornerback position above all else. And that's what Matt Patricia is trying to do here. And that's why he went out and got Jeffery Okuda. Height, weight, speed specimen is the first strength. Look, 6'1" is plus premium elite size for a corner. 205 pounds. That's the money spot when you're talking about the size of a corner. You like them to be above 200 pounds. That's right there in that sweet spot as well. And then 33-inch arms. That's the icing on the cake, essentially. His length is ridiculous for his size. And then you couple in the fact that he's a sub 4'5" guy, and you've got all of the ingredients necessary to have a guy that could be a shutdown corner at the NFL level. Then you start adding in some of these other strengths like impeccable back pedal and transitions. And that's the next one. This guy's so smooth. I mean, when you watched him at the combine, I thought that's when you started to see like small, choppy steps, smooth, turns out of that back pedal, no wasted motion. Everything he did was so silky smooth at the combine, and you just got the sense that this guy is a technician. And so you saw a lot of the things that made him an elite corner at Ohio State and a top 5 pick. Can disrupt, mirror, squeeze, and transition from press. I mean, his press coverage is dynamite. And what it does is it sets the table. It sets the template for what's to come pretty much the rest of the game. I'm going to be in your face. I'm going to delete the airspace. I'm going to harass you. I'm going to make you uncomfortable at the line of scrimmage. Then I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to press and bail. Then I'm going to be off. But I'm never going to be out of reach. Okay? And that's the thing I love about him. But his ability to come up, disrupt you at the line of scrimmage, then mirror you wherever you go, he goes, stay in your hip pocket, squeeze the routes, squeeze you towards the sidelines and use that sideline as a 12th defender, and then transition from that back pedal into his sprint or into his trail mode where he can then make a play on the football. He's just an animal from press. Elite plant and drive, and having elite plant and drive allows you to get away with a lot of things, including playing off. And in his case, he's still not quite there. Again, 1 year of experience. So still not quite there in identifying route combinations and things of that nature and what the the offense is trying to do to him sometimes. And so he's a little slow to diagnose that. But because of his elite feet, he's able to make up for any deficiencies he may have in that awareness department. So his elite plant and drive allows him to contest everything underneath. No free meals, no freebies underneath. You gotta work for everything you get on Jeffery Okuda. Doesn't get beat deep. When you look at that 4.48, that's not a overwhelming speed. It's not that elite cornerback speed you're looking for. Marshon Lattimore was a 4.39. When you look at the elite corners in the game, a lot of those guys are running low 4s, high 4.3s. And, he's running a 4.48, which is not a dynamic time per se, but nobody gets behind this guy. You just don't see it, and if they are behind him, he's in phase and he allowed them to get where they are. But he's a guy that just doesn't get beat deep. We'll see if that continues at the NFL level or not. LLC capabilities, you know me. If you don't have LLC, then you can't be an elite corner at the next level. There's a cap on how good you can be if you're not willing to look, locate, and contest the rock. You can't make a play on something you don't see. This guy's looking back for the football at all times because he wants to make plays. So definitely LLC capabilities here. Times up his PBUs without grabbing wide receivers. So many corners are in great position, but feel the need to put their hands on the receiver, sometimes turning them. And, it doesn't take much for that official, that back judge, to see that hand and a little slight tug and decide, all right, that's enough, I'm throwing the flag. Well, he's one of those guys that doesn't have to put his hands on you to knock the football away. He can sync everything up, time it up, and deflect the football without laying hands on the receiver. That's an art that not many corners have actually mastered. And so that's another thing that I love about Okuda, which keeps the yellow away from his game. Awesome recovery speed. There are some guys that run a 4.3 and don't have elite recovery speed, which doesn't make much sense to me. But then here's a guy that runs, close to a 4.5, but has plenty of recovery speed. And I guess it's just the ability to accelerate. And either you have it or you don't. Some guys need a lot of speed and a lot of buildup to get to that full acceleration, and others take a couple of steps and they're now in fifth gear, and he's one of those guys that can just turn it up. And so, again, able to get back there and make plays on the ball. Willing tackler, that's something else that you got to be willing to do if you want to be an elite corner. You got to be willing to tackle. Jeffery Okuda is willing to do that as well. And then he has some ball skills. Now, only 3 INTs, but again, all 3 of them coming in his lone year as a starter. So you look at what he was able to do in 2019, and you say, if that continues to be the case, and the norm for him, he's going to continue to put up numbers in terms of production, because teams are going to try him as a rookie. They're not going to just give him respect right out of the gate. He's going to have to earn that respect. And so he's going to get targeted. He's going to be tried. And I want to see if he's able to make those plays. But I feel like he's got ball skills to make quarterbacks pay for mistakes in his general vicinity. You go to his weaknesses, and there's not much here, man. This guy's pretty clean. And really all of his weaknesses, to me, pretty much stem from lack of experience. Outside of he can be blocked in the run game. I'd like to see him get off of blocks a little bit better, be a little bit more aggressive in shedding those blocks and getting the ball carriers. But, to me, his biggest weakness right now is he's just got average instincts in route anticipation. To me, that's just going to come with more film study, more experience, having seen it a bunch of times, having made mistakes and teams capitalizing off those mistakes. You learn, and then you get better, and you don't repeat those mistakes again. So I'm just thinking, as he matures and he sees, route combinations, because in the NFL, it's a copycat league. Teams are running a lot of the same concepts. You're going to see a lot of the same type of setups and same kind of route combinations, and he'll become really keen to what's going on, what the offense is trying to do to him, how they're trying to high-low him, how they're trying to set him up, what routes come off of this, what these splits look like and what that means. He'll watch tape and film of guys, and when they line up here, usually this is the route they like to run. And once he gets more acclimated to that, I think he's going to become even more of a beast. But right now, I think he's lacking in that department, and really that stems from just a lack of experience. All right, so I think he's going to get even better, which is scary because he's so good right now. And I remember early in this process, I said, he's not better than Marshon Lattimore. And I stood by that statement for quite a while. And I'm still a Marshon Lattimore guy, but I think coming out of Ohio State, Okuda might actually be a little bit better than that of Marshon Lattimore. I think I'm starting to lean towards that now. Obviously, coming into the league, I think Okuda might be a little bit better. He might have the nod, but obviously once he gets to the league, Marshon Lattimore has experience on him. Marshon Lattimore to me is a really good corner, but nonetheless, this is a hell of a pickup if you're the Lions, and if you want to run the brand of aggressive defense that your head coach Matt Patricia wants to run, similar to what they ran in New England, playing a lot of man-to-man, you need guys like Jeffery Okuda manning up the outside. And so this is, to me, a pick that was imperative. My comp for him is Patrick Peterson, which tells you a lot about what I think of Jeffery Okuda. I see a lot of the same skills, and a lot of the things he does translates to what Patrick Peterson was right out of the gate. The only difference is Okuda isn't a special teams threat like Patrick Peterson was coming out of LSU, but the size, Peterson was a 4.3 guy, but the length, the ability, the footwork, the technique, all of that is just fundamentally sound. And I think this is a guy that comes in and immediately helps change the face of your defense. First round, third pick overall, cornerback out of the Ohio State University. Jeffery Okuda, for me, is, of course, a 5 for the Detroit Lions, getting their draft underway. We go to the next selection in this Lions draft. Second round, 35th pick overall, running back out of Georgia, DeAndre Swift is the pick. 5'8", 212 pounds, ran a 4.48 at the combine. 196 attempts rushing for 1,218 yards and 7 scores to go along with 24 receptions for 216 yards and 1 touchdown in 14 games in 2019. For his career, 440 rushes for 2,885 yards and 20 scores. As far as receiving is concerned, 73 grabs for 666 yards and 5 scores in 43 contests for the former Bulldog back. I had him as my number 2 running back. I had a late first round grade on him. He ends up going early second round, third pick of the second round. And I had this guy as my number 2 back. He went number 2 overall. So not a surprise there. I was shocked at the guy that went in front of him, though. But nonetheless, you got a stud here. And frankly, you got a steal. Even though he didn't fall very far, I thought late first round, I wasn't going to be shocked if no running back was taken in the first round. I had almost predicted as much, but I thought one would go in the first round, not the one that ultimately went. I thought he was going to land in the second round. I didn't expect him to land in Detroit, however, seeing as if you just spent a second round pick on Kerryon Johnson just a mere 2 seasons ago. I didn't expect yet another running back, but keep this in mind, and then we'll get into this breakdown. Again, they're trying to turn the Lions into some form of the Patriots. And what did the Patriots always have for Tom Brady at Brady's disposal just about every year of his career? Some form of a Brady back. And I've always named them the Brady back in the original, the OG Brady back. You go all the way back to Kevin Falk, once upon a time, was the original Brady back. And then we saw that Brady back evolve into a number of different guys, whether it was Shane Vereen or it was Danny Woodhead or the latest Brady back is James White. The list goes on and on of guys that can run it, guys that can catch it, guys that can do a little bit of everything with the football out of the backfield. And so they're looking for that guy, and they doubled down on it in this particular draft. And they may have gotten their guy right here in DeAndre Swift. Speed is the first strength. 4.48 40 is plenty fast enough at the NFL level for a running back. Low center of gravity. To me, he's got a compact build. And with the running back position, you like running backs with compact builds that are stout, that are well built, but low to the ground. They don't take a lot of punishment. They don't take head-on shots. And they're able to, win. Low man wins in the NFL. And so guys that are a little bit shorter are able to win in certain instances where they're able to drop their pads and able to run through contact. Acceleration. We've seen DeAndre Swift over the years at Georgia, whether he was a freshman in the national championship game versus Alabama, or watching him over the years evolve into a guy that can catch it out of the backfield and make plays. Acceleration has always been something he's been really good at. You get him out in space and he gets to turn it up. He's a hard guy to track from behind. Agility probably, and make you miss out, couple those together, are probably 2 of his strongest attributes. His ability to stick his foot in the ground and break a dude off is next level. One of the better guys in this draft at doing so. Similar to last year's first round running back in Josh Jacobs, a lot of the same DNA here in DeAndre Swift, that ability to stick his foot in the ground and make a dude miss and break a guy off. We saw how good Josh Jacobs was at doing that at Alabama and even into his rookie season. If not cut short, easily could have been a candidate for Rookie of the Year offensively last year for the Raiders. So I think you're getting a lot of that here in DeAndre Swift as well. Yards after contact and contact balance are the next 2 strengths. To me, they go hand in hand. If you have tremendous contact balance, you're going to get yards after contact. he is a guy that you're hitting his leg and somehow he's able to keep his balance. I always talk about contact balance being one of the biggest attributes that I look for in elite backs, because when you look around the league at the guys that are the best in this league at the running back position, a lot of them have tremendous contact balance, whether you're talking Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara, or even when Todd Gurley was at his peak, or even when Le'Veon Bell was at his peak. These are guys that you hit and somehow they manage to stay on their feet and gain another 5 to 7 yards, or even keep their feet and bust off a 25-yard gain after that contact. So he's another one of those guys. He'll leap over you. He'll stumble, but he won't fall. He'll put his hand down to keep his balance, whatever he's got to do. Contact balance through the roof. Pass catching ability. That's something that I think the Lions were really interested in. Look, they've been hunting for a Brady back since Matt Patricia got there. They went out and signed J.D. McKissick, thinking he was going to solve their issues and be multi-purposeful and multifaceted, come in there, catch the football, run it a little bit. And they didn't get what they thought they were getting out of J.D. McKissick. They moved on from him. They drafted a running back out of Maryland last year, hoping he could be their new form of a Brady back. For whatever reason, their ex-Notre Dame back that could catch it really well, they moved on from him. And they just haven't found that guy. And so I think DeAndre Swift is that guy, and he can catch it. And that's, to me, one of the hallmarks of a Brady back, is a guy that can catch it out of the backfield. You got to be able to catch the football. DeAndre Swift is able to do that. The next strength is his vision. Your tremendous vision to set blocks up, make things happen, see it before it happens. That's another hallmark of elite backs, is tremendous vision, seeing it before it happens. DeAndre Swift is able to do that as well. And then all 3 downs, he's an all-purpose back. Again, that's, the hallmark of a Brady back, which is essentially what you're looking for here, and what you're most likely getting out of DeAndre Swift, is a guy that can play on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down. Weaknesses. His size, he's not the biggest guy in the world at 5'8", 212, but it's not going to be that big of a weakness, honestly speaking. Can he be a workhorse, or does he have to share a backfield? I think that's a question that if you're nitpicking, you ask. But, in this NFL, in this day and age, how many backs outside of Christian McCaffrey, who's really carrying the load for their team? Derrick Henry did it last year for the Titans, but how many backs in the league are actually the guy? Maybe Dalvin Cook in Minnesota. There's not many. All right. A lot of guys are sharing the workload with some other back in their backfield. You've got to be pretty special to be carrying the load on your own. And so there's a lot of mileage left on DeAndre Swift, because he never was the guy at Georgia. He was always a part of a duo or trio backfield at Georgia, especially when he first got there. There were like 19 backs, all of them NFL bound. When you're talking Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, and all of those guys that were in that backfield, he was back there with those guys, and Holyfield and all those guys. So he's got low mileage on the odometer, but does he have to share a backfield? Maybe. Who cares? At the end of the day, this guy's going to be ultra productive, and if you could get your running back out of Auburn to stay healthy, then you got a hell of a two-headed monster back there between the two of them. So does he have true game-breaking speed? That's a valid question. I was at all times, I wasn't always blown away by his speed. Like I said at the top of this breakdown, his speed is plenty enough at the NFL level, but it's a question. If you are looking for a game changer, 4.48, not necessarily going to knock your socks off, but again, not many guys are catching him from behind. I'll just say that. And, one more thing is his fumbles. You got to hold on to the rock. He is a guy that isn't afraid of putting the ball on the carpet and putting the church's money on the floor. 7 career fumbles, lost 4 of them. This is how the breakdown looks, and this is not encouraging. In 2017, he had 2 fumbles, lost 1 of them. In 2018, he had 2 fumbles, lost 1 of them. In 2019, his touches went up, so did his amount of fumbles. 3 fumbles in 2019, lost 2 of them. So that's trending in the wrong direction. More touches equal more fumbles. So you'd like to see him scale back on the amount of times the ball is out of his possession. And I think that's something you're going to have to work on him with, because he will put the ball on the floor. But he played in all 43 games of his career, which also speaks to his ability to stay healthy. So I love this selection for a team that hasn't had stability at the running back position. Kerryon Johnson looked like he was going to provide that for you, but he continues to get injured. And so Matthew Stafford, pretty much his entire career, hasn't had a reliable running back in the backfield. That may have come to an end with the selection of DeAndre Swift. I comp him to DeAngelo Williams, the ex-Carolina Panthers, Pittsburgh Steelers back that, to me, for many years, was a dynamic back that split the carries in the backfield with Jonathan Stewart. So I think that's the kind of back you're getting, a guy that's going to split the workload with another back in the backfield. And I think if Kerryon Johnson can stay healthy, as I mentioned already, one hell of a 1-2 punch. In the second round, 35th pick overall, running back out of Georgia, DeAndre Swift for me is a 5. It's a tremendous pickup for the Lions, and one that I didn't know they necessarily needed, but I'm glad that they made the selection. You move on to the next pick in the draft for the Detroit Lions, third round, 67th pick overall, edge rusher out of Notre Dame, Julian Okwara is the pick. 6'4", 252 pounds, 34-inch arms, 7 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 blocked kick in 2019 for the Fighting Irish. In his career, 24 tackles for loss, 15 and a half of which were sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 1 pass breakup, 1 block kick, and 2 interceptions. So this is a guy that filled up the stat sheet throughout his career. I had a third round grade on him. You take him in the third round. So to me, that is tremendous value. I had him as my 9th rated edge rusher in this draft. He was the 7th edge rusher taken, so not too far off there either. Strengths, long filling frame. And so I think he can even get bigger. You know, I wouldn't be shocked by the time he's done filling out his frame that he's somewhere in that 260, 262 to 265 pound neighborhood when it's all said and done. Probably more along the lines of 260 or so, but he's not done filling out his frame. But man, is he long. 34-inch arms for an edge rusher is outstanding, and it's the kind of guy that can give tackles problems at the next level. Huge strides, eat up chunks of real estate is the next strength. This is a guy that I watched very closely for his entire career at Notre Dame because I am a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. So I can tell you a lot about Julian Okwara. And one thing that he was very adept at doing at Notre Dame was beating tackles around the corner with his huge strides. Once he was able to win the edge, they could not recover because of how much ground this guy is eating up with his strides. He gets to the quarterback very quickly, closes on them or the ball carrier because of his huge strides. So when he gets to open up, he's lethal because of how much grass and real estate he's able to eat up. His length can be a real game changer. Talked about that already, but you know, when you've got the kind of length that this guy has and you're able to contact that offensive lineman or knock their hands down first, it gives you so many advantages. I love when guys like Julian Okwara, who have this kind of length, are able to use the latch and snatch. To me, that's one of those, if you got length, should be one of your staple moves in your arsenal. Right now, he does not have that. Someone needs to teach him that ASAP because that's a winner all day in the league. Has a nice stab as a precursor to a bull rush. So with that, those 34-inch arms, he does produce, however, a beautiful stab. You know, some call it a pole vault. I call it, you know, a long arm of the law. Either way, that stab, that one-arm stab, gets offensive tackles off balance, and then you proceed to then put them on skates. And, you know, once you get them off balance with that one-hand chuck, that stab, then you go in for the kill. You smell blood. You go in for the kill at that point. Bull rush him, jack him up, and he does a fine job of doing that. He's developing a secondary spin. Hasn't quite mastered and perfected it yet, but you see the makings of a guy that's understanding, okay, speed rush to the outside not working. How about this secondary spin to come and fall back inside, and let's see if we can't do some damage now. And that's a winner You know, a lot of guys, once they rush up the field initially and don't win, they just allow that tackle to ride them around the pocket. You know, what you should do after you have that tackle fully committed to opening up his hips and pushing you around, that's when you spin back inside. He's not going to be able to react. All of his weight is to the outside. Now you spin back to the inside. That quarterback's thinking he's got a lane to step up. And now you close that lane, and all of a sudden you've fallen right into a sack. He's developing that. He doesn't quite have it down pat, however, but I love the fact that he's aware that that is something that he can use. Can turn the corner and flatten the edge to accelerate to the quarterback. Kind of talked about that with his ability to eat up space with his huge strides, but his ability to turn the corner and then flatten to the quarterback and not arc, but then flatten, that's the way you get to the quarterback. That's the way you produce sacks, is turning that corner and then flattening to the quarterback and not continuing up that arc, which is what that tackle wants you to do so they can push you around. He's able to turn that corner, and that ability to stride it out allows him to flatten to the quarterback and get there quickly. When he gets to the quarterback, he's looking for the strip. I love that. I've always said, but I will much rather you bypass the kill shot and just go straight for the rock. You know, the ball is what's most important. You know, if you light that quarterback up and, you know, you send a message to him and the rest of the game he's seeing ghosts because you just lit him up, cool, that's great. But you know what I'd prefer? I'd prefer the rock. I'd actually like you to force the fumble and give us a chance to recover that and shorten the field for the offense. And he's always looking to get that football out when he gets to the quarterback. And then he's got NFL bloodlines. His brother Romeo Okwara is in the league. As a matter of fact, he'll be joining him, as you know, as Lions fans, in Detroit. So NFL bloodlines, that's also a plus as well. His weaknesses: plays high and loses leverage too easily. He's a taller guy at 6'4", and sometimes he just pops straight up. You know, and when you come straight up as a 6'4" defender, you lose the leverage battle. You're showing your numbers and you're showing your pads, and it's easy for a lineman to get up under your pads and stalemate you or hit you in your chest and stop your momentum. And so he's got to be able to play with better leverage as a run defender and as a pass defender as well. Not enough options in the Rolodex right now. His toolbox is a little bare. He needs to fill it up with more pass rushing options. Right now, there's not many things outside of the speed rush, the long arm of the law, and a secondary spin that he's developing. There's not much in the toolbox right now. He's got to become more diverse in how he attacks tackles, guards, and the like, trying to get to the quarterback. Right now, I think he's extremely raw. Can be stiff in his movements, including rush and coverage. You know, sometimes he can be a little stiff, doesn't always bend the way you want him to. He's not very comfortable dropping into space. That's not his thing. So he can be a little stiff in his movements. You know, and not everybody's natural out in space. And Julian Okwara, for me, not one of those guys that's extremely natural out in space. But has done some work with the 2 interceptions. And then injury concerns. Broken left fibula cost him the final 4 games of the 2019 season, which was his senior year. So do have some concerns there. Obviously, you weren't able to get him into your facility and check out his injury. I'm pretty sure that he was tested at the combine, however, and the teams were able to get a look at that medical, and maybe the Lions were comfortable with what they saw there. But nonetheless, solid acquisition. He doesn't blow my doors off, but he's a solid acquisition to add to the mix in Detroit. For what you're trying to do defensively, I think he'll fit right in. And so in the 3rd round, 67th pick overall, edge rusher out of Notre Dame, Julian Okwara, for me, is a 3. My comp for him is Sharif Miller, the ex-Penn State product that was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, I think 2 drafts ago, in the 3rd or 4th round. Similar body type, similar raw defender that has a lot of upside but needs a lot of fine-tuning and coaching to get all of that potential out of him. So we'll see if the Lions are able to do that. As we move on to the next selection in this draft for the Lions, we stay in the third round, this time on the offensive side of the football. 75th pick overall, offensive lineman out of the Ohio State University, Jonah Jackson is the pick. 6'3", 306 pounds, 33.5-inch arms, 14 games, 14 starts at left guard in 2019, 43 games for his career, 30 starts, 14 at left guard, 13 at right guard, 3 at center. So you're getting a guy with versatility that can play all 3 positions on the interior of the offensive line, which is a big-time bonus and added benefit. Strengths: physical man mover in the run game. To me, where he is at his best is in the run game, going downhill, whether he's in the double team or, he's blocking the man in front of him as a base blocker. He's taking care of business in the run game, and he's moving guys. That's what he does. Has nasty tendencies. He's not a nasty boy, but he's got nasty tendencies. You see it, but he's not like, dumping a guy on his skull, or he's not being overly aggressive up until or a little past the whistle, but you see a little bit of that nasty streak every now and again. So he's got nasty tendencies. Good on double teams and combos, and finds his way to the second level. He's not a tremendous athlete. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but he's really good on those double team and combo blocks, and he finds his way to the second level and looks to get to that backer and get that kick out block. Looks for work always. When work is scarce, and we're right now in a bit of a downturn, not a lot of people at work, work's a little scarce. And so, he's out here looking for work, man. He's looking for things to do. He doesn't have anybody to block. He'll go help the tackle. He'll go help the center, but he's not going to just stand still. That's not what Jonah Jackson's about. So he's always looking for work when it's scarce. Reacts well to twists and stunts. Does a really good job of picking that up and not allowing those guys to sneak by. He pinches down and then fans back out and picks up that guy that's looping around. So it does a really good job picking up twists and stunts. Offers versatility. Talked about that at the top of the breakdown with him. Can play all 3 of the interior offensive line positions. Spent most of his collegiate career at both guard positions, but also had enough experience at center that allows you to feel comfortable sticking him there if need be. Durable, sturdy O-lineman, just a guy that was able to stay relatively healthy throughout his career, be available. And so that's also a big-time benefit at the next level as well. Weaknesses. Not a plus athlete. He gets to the second level, but barely. It's a struggle. When he pulls, it's not very fluid nor fast. So he's a guy that, not a plus athlete, does his job, does it admirably, but not a guy that's going to change the game as a guard at the NFL level with his athleticism. Hands are wide in pass sets, allowing for bull rush opportunities. As a pass protector, he has some deficiencies. This is one of them. His hands are inconsistent where they land. You'd like his hands to land up under the pads, right around the numbers, center cut, every time, which is what you're aiming for as an offensive lineman. That's not where you're getting. You're getting his hands outside the framework, and that's allowing for guys to get inside of his hands and get up inside of his chest and drive him back. And once he gets going, it's hard for him to stop the bleeding. Doesn't bend at the knees, plays with uneven base. His base is very narrow, and that's how you see him off balance and getting bull rushed at times. And he's one of these guys that bends at the waist. He doesn't bend his knees most of the time. So, again, that's another way that you'll find yourself lunging forward and finding yourself off balance, instead of bending with your knees, with a nice wide base that allows you to sit down and anchor. So again, he struggles in some of these departments in terms of the passing game. And then delayed blitzers are problematic, which is weird because I just told you he does a really good job with twists and stunts, but for some odd reason, delayed blitzes give him trouble. You watch him against Clemson, and guys are just coming free. And you'd like to see Jonah Jackson find a way to get a piece of these defenders as they're getting home. And you're like, come on, dude, just get a piece of them. Give me something. So that's also something. And some of that just has to do with the fact that laterally he can't move as quick. So if he doesn't see it, he doesn't identify that late blitzer, he's not going to be able to move laterally quick enough to get there and make something happen. So he's got to be able to identify that a little sooner in order to have an impact there. I had a 4th round grade on him. You took him in the 3rd round, a little bit higher than I thought he needed to come off the board. But you know my mantra and my motto, get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. And so you guys did that in the 3rd round, 75th pick overall. Offensive lineman out of The Ohio State University. Jonah Jackson for me is a 3 as the Lions look to bolster their offensive line. Speaking of which, they continue to try to bolster their offensive line with this next selection. 4th round, 121st pick overall. Offensive lineman out of Kentucky, Logan Stenberg is the pick. 6'6", 317 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, 13 games, 13 starts at left guard, 51 total games for his career, 39 of which were starts at the left guard position. Had a 4th or 5th round grade on him, so anywhere in there I was fine with the selection. You take him in the 4th round, no problems with that whatsoever. Strengths: big, tall guard that bends at the knees and comes out of his stance low, which helps him with the leverage game. Again, low man wins in the NFL, especially in the trenches. And then you couple that fact with he's 6'6", so he's a big guy. He's angular, he's tall, so it's a lot easier for guys that have a lower center of gravity to come off the ball and beat him. But because he himself comes off the ball so low and he bends his knees very adequately, he's able to then give himself a fighting chance in that leverage department and doesn't just give it away by standing up tall and straight and allowing guys to get up under his pads. Sound fundamentals allow for consistency. He just does a really good job of doing his job. Footwork is quality. His awareness of what he is responsible for on that particular snap and what the defense is trying to do and how to combat that. His angles that he takes to get his block and assignment done. I just think he does a lot of things really, really well in terms of the fundamentals department. He's a nasty boy. This was a guy that had to sit out a couple series against Virginia Tech in the bowl game because he picked up a personal foul penalty. He's a guy that's being a little rough after the whistle has been blown. And, one of those guys, he's a true nasty boy. And, and you kind of see what the Lions are trying to do up front here with some of these moves. Also bringing in a big V in free agency. Talked about all the moves that the Lions made. One of the biggest moves was bringing in Big V from Philadelphia, and he's a guy that can be physical, and he's a big guy as well. Initial contact jostles defenders, and what he does is he lays hands on guys, and you can tell that contact is pretty stout. That contact is very, very heavy. His hands are heavy, and it gives him an opportunity to displace that offensive lineman and get the early upper hand in the rep. He doesn't always keep the upper hand. We'll talk about that here in a second, but he gets the initial upper hand with that initial contact coming out of his stance low and physical. It gives him a shot on most snaps. Moves better than I expected. I looked at him and I said, okay, he's going to be a plotter, a big, long limbering offensive lineman. And I actually thought he moved better than what I anticipated when I first turned on the tape. Now, don't get it twisted. His skip pulls look like he's moving in slow motion, but somehow, some way, he's able to get to that second level and get his hands on backers and safety. So he moved a lot better than I had anticipated when I first turned on the tape. Weaknesses: short arms for his frame. When you see a guy that's 6'6", you're thinking, okay, probably going to get some 34-inch arms with this package at minimum, 33.5-inch arms, and to have 32.5-inch arms just doesn't really match up with the frame that you're getting here with a 6'6" offensive lineman. doesn't sustain well enough, and initial leverage is lost once he stands upright. So I talked about him coming out of his stance low and helping him with that leverage battle, but it doesn't always stay that way. And so once he then pops up and stands up upright, he then loses that leverage battle, and now it's a struggle to try to keep that guy in front of you, and he doesn't sustain well. I talked about him gaining the initial advantage and upper hand when he comes out of his stance aggressively and he has that initial pop and that lineman is feeling his power. And it's almost equated to, a boxer and, oh, I tasted your power now. I know what you're capable of. Now I'm not afraid, And so that initial pop is dangerous, but then that guy is able to then shed him and get to the ball carrier. He doesn't sustain. He's got to learn how to lock on and hold on to that guy and not allow him to get into the play. Hands can get a little grabby. Saw him called for a couple of holding penalties. That's something that should concern you because he's a guy that tries to get away with some stuff inside. But some of them are so obvious. He's slamming guys on the ground. I told you he's nasty, slamming dudes in the ground. And some of these are egregious holds where he's grabbing the back nameplate. Like, that's hard to get away with. If I can see you grabbing a guy back around the numbers and the nameplate area, like, you're begging for a holding penalty. And so he needs to make sure that he keeps his hands in an area. Even if you're going to try to get away with a little tug, that's not uncommon. Linemen do it all the time. You just got to be a little bit more discreet about it. But I like Logan Stenberg in the 4th round, 121st pick overall. Logan Stenberg, for me, is a 3 as we continue with this Lions draft. We move on to the next selection for the Lions in this draft. And it's a wide receiver out of Wisconsin, 5th round, 166th pick. Quintez Cephus is the pick, 6'1", 202 pounds, ran a 4.73 at the combine. He was very fortunate, one of the few teams that had a early pro day before the 19 hit and shut everything down. He was able to clean that up at his pro day, run a 4.56, which is a much more respectable time, and which is probably the reason he got selected here in the 5th round. Without it, you may be talking about him dropping to potentially the 6th, maybe even the 7th round, if not undrafted. But nonetheless, there's a guy, 59 grabs for 901 yards and 7 scores in 14 games in 2019 for the Badgers. His career stats, 93 catches for 1,496 yards and 13 scores in 38 games for the Wisconsin Badgers. There's a little bit of a gap there. Missed all of 2018, fighting 2 counts of sexual assault. He was acquitted of all charges, but it was a lengthy process, one that he essentially was fighting for his freedom. And glad he was able to fight that off, get back on the football field, and now make it to the National Football League. I had an early day 3 grade on him. 4th round was where I thought the best value for him would be. You get him in the 5th, so I think that's good value. I had him as my number 19th wide receiver in this draft. He was taken 21st overall, so not too far away there. I'll give you my comp a little bit later on, but his strengths, he's got good size at the receiver position. He's got that like sort of an imposing size, and it's not like he's 6'3", 220 pounds, but he uses his frame well, to box out receiver or defenders, and he bodies guys up, You watched him play a physical brand of football, but still be able to get vertical on some guys in the Big Ten. It was pretty impressive, actually. Toughness is another one of his characteristics, man. I watched him be really tough. And whether you're talking against Ohio State or you're talking against Iowa, you're talking against Minnesota, whatever the case may be, these are all good teams that played tough defense. And he was putting in work, man. I was really impressed with Quintez Cephus in some of the biggest games of the season. He showed up and played some outstanding ball. Yards after the catch, like I said, that kind of goes hand in hand with the toughness. He's not the fastest guy out there, but he's physical. And if you don't come with your hard hat and lunch pail, you're not going to get this guy down on the ground. So he gets yards after the catch. Separates with his body, and I kind of alluded to that when I talked about his size. It's not like he's 6'3", but he knows how to shield defenders off with his frame. And I talked about the new wave of 3 ways to separate. You know, it used to be 2 ways, quickness and speed. Now there's a 3rd way, separating with size. And if you know how to use your body and know how to use your frame to your advantage, you too can separate with size. And that's what Quintez Cephus does. He separates very well with his body. Makes tough contested catches. That's going to be his calling card at the next level. The guy that on 3rd and 5, you need 6. He's going to run to the sticks. Corner's going to be draped all over him. Stafford's going to force it to him. He's going to come down with it. You're going to get a fresh set of downs. That's what he brings to the table. Yeah, he may be able to get vertical if he catches a corner sleeping and napping out there on the outside, but more likely than not, guys are going to be able to stay in his hip pocket. He's going to have to make contested catches, and he did that very effectively at Wisconsin. Clean release off the line of scrimmage. He does a really good job of fighting through press and getting off the line of scrimmage and being able to get into his route so that the timing and rhythm of the play isn't distorted by an aggressive corner. He's able to beat press coverage and get in to his route. Weaknesses: can't separate with speed or quickness. Again, that's not who he is. That's not what he's going to be asked to do. He's going to have to separate with his body, or he's going to have to make tough contested catches, which if he continues to catch it at the rate that he did at Wisconsin, he'll be just fine. Concentration drops do occur. That's something that he will have to clean up. You do see a few drops of catchable balls on tape, and it's amazing. He'll make the spectacular catch with a guy draped all over him, and then he'll drop the easy one where the defender is 3 yards away from him. And so just need him to focus, see the ball into his hands, and make the catch. Not much of a blocker for as physical as I've been touting this guy to be. Not much of a blocker on the outside. I'd like to see him be a little bit more physical, lay hands on these defensive backs and DBs, and really be a little bit more physical in the run game. And then obviously he's going to have to answer the questions about the sexual assault situation. I think teams probably had a chance to talk to him at the combine, maybe make themselves a little bit more comfortable with his situation and him as a person. And, that's something that you just have to, talk to him about if you haven't already. I'm pretty sure you don't take him if you haven't done all of your homework on that situation. And I'm pretty sure if you haven't talked to him yourself. So I think they're probably fine with that. My comp for him is Kelvin Harmon. Just last year, NC State wide receiver selected in the 6th round by the Redskins. Similar body type, similar ability, similar 40 time, similar skill set. Some concentration drops on film for Harmon last year. Separates with size, not a speed demon, but did get vertical on some guys. Same thing here with Quintez Cephus. Physical receiver, some drops on tape that you don't like. Got on top of some guys that fell asleep behind the wheel, but that's not going to be who he is at the next level. Going to have to make tough contested catches, able to do that. So I see a lot of Kelvin Harmon here in Quintez Cephus. In the 5th round, 166th pick overall, wide receiver out of Wisconsin. Quintez Cephus for me is a 3 as the Lions continue to motor on in this draft. Still in the 5th round, next player, running back out of New Mexico State. 5th round, 172nd pick overall. Jason Huntley is the pick. 5'9", $193, ran a 4.37 at his pro day. Another guy that really benefited from an early pro day. Without it, probably goes undrafted. The 4.37 jumps off the screen at you. You see it on tape as well. And that time that you're able to put down on your paper really gave him a legitimate shot at getting drafted, and it happened for him. Season stats: 154 rushes for 1,090 yards and 9 scores. Receiving 40 catches, 192 yards and 2 scores. And in the kickoff department, 15 returns for 302 yards and no scores in 2019. However, for his career, 373 rushes for 2,182 yards and 18 scores. Receiving 134 grabs for 1,126 yards and 7 scores. And kickoffs, 59 returns for 1,521 yards and 5 returns for scores. So dynamic return guy, dynamic on the ground, dynamic through the air. This is a guy that can impact the game in a multitude of ways. I talked about you doubling down on a bunch of positions. As you saw already, you doubled down on defensive or offensive linemen. Now you're doubling down on very diverse and versatile backs. And later on in the draft, you double down on interior defensive linemen. So this was a draft where the Lions doubled up a bunch of times. I had a 5th round grade on Jason Huntley, and you took him in the 5th round. So again, good value. I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later on. Strengths, explosive, dynamic playmaker. That's essentially what you're getting here. And just think about this. And I thought about this when I was watching him on tape and thinking about the relationship between he and the Lions. And I said, when's the last time the Lions had a guy that anytime they touched it on the football field could take it the distance? When's the last time the Lions had a guy like that? You know, and I had to go all the way back to Barry Sanders. I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, Roy Williams at the receiver position was nice, but you know, no one was really afraid of Roy taking it the distance. You know, Roy revved it up. Yeah, he could run, you know, really, really fast in a straight line, but no one was afraid of him. I mean, they haven't had any backs. I've already talked about that. That's well documented that they haven't had any legit elite backs in Detroit. Javit Best, maybe, before all the head injuries, was maybe a guy that you could, you know, was a threat to take it the distance, but not many guys have been in Detroit that are a threat every time they touch it to take it the distance. Jason Huntley now gives you that, and so does DeAndre Swift. Speed and acceleration, you know, and just to piggyback off of that, you know, maybe Golden Tate, but I mean, even Golden Tate had his limitations. I mean, this is a guy that's truly dynamic here. Golden Tate wasn't running a 4.37. That's for damn sure. Speed and acceleration are Jason Huntley's bread and butter. That's what's going to, that and his versatility and his ability to make you miss. But his speed and acceleration are what is probably a selling point for a lot of people. Obviously, the Swiss Army knife nature of what he brings to the table, running back, slot, pass catcher out of the backfield, and return man, that's intriguing. That's a skill set that allows you to do a multitude of things, fill a bunch of roster spots and voids on the roster. So him being a Swiss Army knife also got him drafted, along with his ability to make people miss out in space. He can juke. He can cut without having to stop. So, you know, and lose speed. So there's a lot of good there with Jason Huntley. Good vision and agility to set up blocks and cut on a dime to seize them. He's, to me, a guy that really benefits from a zone run blocking scheme. He presses the hole, and then a cutback lane emerges. He sticks his foot in the ground and exploits it. So, to me, he's best out of the gun and running in a zone run blocking scheme. He presses the line of scrimmage, and then a cutback lane opens up. He sticks his foot in the ground, and he's able to find it. And he's able to locate that cutback lane. Even if it's a gap or two behind where he's pressing, his vision allows him to see all the way backside if that's where the cutback lane is. So he's a guy that has good vision and agility to be able to set that up and then exploit it once it is there. You've heard the old adage, patience to accelerate through. That's how he attacks the line of scrimmage. He's patient to the hole, and then he attacks aggressively. He usually wants to bounce it to the outside, and at 193, I don't blame him, but a lot of times, too, he'll stick his foot in the ground and take it up the field. Offers up some quality pass pro. I was shocked. Look, I don't want him head up with a blitzing linebacker that's 240 pounds. He's not going to win that battle, but when he decides to cut a guy or engage, he's not afraid, and he'll give that quarterback just enough time to get the football off. He's not a liability. That's all I need you to be, is not a liability in pass pro. Is he a guy that can get trucked as a $193 pass blocker? Sure. But he's going to put his body in harm's way to try to give that quarterback all the time they need to deliver the football. So I can respect that. Weaknesses, his size. He's got a thin, lanky build, and it's hard to talk about someone being lanky at 5'9", but when I see guys like this, usually they're compact, low center of gravity, kind of thick, in terms of their build. He's kind of long and angular. He's kind of lanky at 5'9", a buck 93. So he's a guy that can get ragdoll a little bit. He's fast and dynamic, but was able to be caught down the sidelines a couple of times, which, you can see the acceleration in the burst, and you're like, oh, is this the one? Is he gone this time? And then, you see him and you're like, how did that guy catch you? Like, he kind of had the angle, but with your speed, you expect you to outrun that angle. But, look, he's dynamic. And no doubt about it. He gets an angle, he gets to the outside, and he gets to turn it up. I don't envision many guys catching him, but I did see some guys catch him down the sideline, able to push him out of bounds. And you know what I think his biggest problem is, too? And I did put this in my notes, is that he's one of those look back runners. Like, somebody's chasing him and he's constantly looking to see where they're at. Just run, dude. You're fast. Probably faster than the guy that's chasing you. Just focus on running and they probably won't catch up to you. But he's one of those guys that has to keep, like I call them peekaboo runners. He wants to keep peeking. Peekaboo, I see you, peekaboo. He wants to keep peeking. Just run, dude. You're fast. And then finally, ball security issues, man. Another guy, just like you took earlier in the draft in DeAndre Swift, another guy with some issues toting the rock. 6 fumbles in the last 2 seasons, 3 of them lost. And get this, 5 of those fumbles coming in 2019. All right, losing 2 of them, 1 coming last year in 2018. Are in the 2018 season. So he's trending in the wrong direction. Again, another one of these guys saw an uptick in production in terms of touches offensively, and thus you saw the number of fumbles also take an uptick as well. So he's got to protect the football. He can be a little loosey-goosey with it. A couple times on tape, I'm seeing him cut around a defender and do one of these arm over moves with the ball extended like this. Bruh, we don't do that up here, man. All right. You may be getting away with that in the WAC, or in the Mountain West out there. This is not that. Put that ball away. Protect the Duke at all costs. He's going to have to be a little bit more secure with that rock, or else he will not be getting touches. But I like this guy. I like this pick, and I like what he brings to the table in his diversity. 5th round, 172nd pick overall, running back out of New Mexico State. Jashon Huntley, for me, is a 3. As we move on to the final picks of this draft, both of them defensive linemen. We start in the 6th round, 197th pick overall, defensive lineman out of Utah. John Penisini is the pick, 6'1", 318 pounds, 33-inch arms, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 pass breakup in 14 games for the Utah Utes. In his career, 15 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 pass breakups, 1 blocked kick in 41 games. This was a guy that was a JUCO transfer that landed in Utah in 2017. So only a couple years of real starting experience here for John Penisini. I had a 7th round to undraftable grade on him. You take him in the 6th round, a little early for me. I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later. And my comp for Jashon Huntley was Tyler Ervin. If you remember, San Jose State running back, Mr. Do-It-All for them, returned kickoffs, was dynamic there, caught it out of the backfield, was dynamic there, rushed it for them, was dynamic there, drafted by the Houston Texans. I always get excited for these smaller scat backs, and then they get in the league and they kind of don't live up to the hype. So I've got my guard up against Jashon Huntley, but I like him a lot. As we get back to John Penisini. Strengths: stout, low center of gravity defender that consistently wins the leverage battle. He's 6'1", and got 33-inch arms, so he's able to stay lower than the guy in front of him more times than not, and that allows him to really plant himself and be stout at the point of attack. Heavy, violent hands that initially jolts offensive linemen. I kind of gave you that analogy of a boxer. He's a guy that, those hands early on in a fight, you want to taste the guy's power to know what you're up against. Hopefully you've got a chin that can withstand it, because if that guy's power is more than your chin can stand, you're going down and you may not get up. But if you taste the guy's power, and ultimately you don't want to get hit first and foremost, but if you do and you feel like, well, that was his best punch and I took it and I'm good, he can't hurt me. Now you become even more aggressive. And that's how offensive linemen kind of treat John Penisini. Is like, man, he's pretty damn strong. And that initial hit really kind of jolted me a bit, and it kind of knocked me off my equilibrium for a hot second. But now I'm back and I'm good, and I've taken his best punch, and he's still in front of me. He can't hurt me. And so initially he has a chance to win a rep, but he doesn't because he can't capitalize off that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But he handles double teams very well. Hard to uproot John Penisini out of the middle of a defense because he's so stout and wins that leverage battle. Weaknesses, no rush prowess at all to me. And that kind of goes with one of my other weaknesses for him. To me, at best, he's a rotational first and second down defensive lineman at best. That's all he can offer you. No third down value whatsoever. He's not getting to the quarterback. He's not a pass rusher. Doesn't have any moves. Nothing in the way of pass rushing here out of John Penisini. Gets the early advantage but can't maintain it. I talked about that with the heavy hands and kind of knocking a offensive lineman off kilter a bit, but he doesn't build off of that. He doesn't use that initial jolt to then swim or spin or bull rush. He doesn't take advantage of that little slight stun that he is able to get off on that offensive lineman. And so he gets the early advantage but doesn't maintain it. And then I noticed he just gets off the snap really slow. Everybody else is up the field and he's just getting off the ball. That's also something that I think he needs to improve upon. I think he's a little late off the ball as well. But my comp for him is Chris Neal, a.k.a. the Pocono Punisher. Once upon a time, 7th round draft pick of the Washington Redskins. A guy that had some potential but dealt with some injuries in his career. Similar body type, right around 6'1", 6'2", 320 pounds or so. Same kind of arm length, and was actually a quality NFL run stuffer, and just got hurt, man. Too many injuries, ended his career early. Hopefully Penisini's able to stay healthy and has a fighting shot at cracking his roster. But again, run stuffing defensive lineman, not much else. The Lions added Danny Shelton, a run stuffing, first and second down, defensive tackle. Penisini is kind of in that mold, so we'll see if he's able to give you any value there. But here in the 6th round, defensive lineman out of Utah, John Penisini, for me, is a 2. As we wrap up this Lions draft here in the 7th round, 235th pick overall, defensive lineman out of the Ohio State University, the 3rd Buckeye selected by the Lions in this draft, Jashon Cornell is the pick. 6'3", 285, 6.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble in 14 games in 2019 for the Buckeyes. For his career, 13.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 2 forced fumbles in 45 games. Enough quickness off the snap to scare interior offensive linemen. I think that's his best attribute, is his quickness. He's got to use that to win. Otherwise, he's just not going to win. Has a little secondary spin to free himself. I like that. He doesn't use it enough. I'd like to see him use it more when he doesn't win initially off the snap with the quickness. Bust that spin out, and do that. And when he does, he usually is able to then get free and become a part of the play. So I'd like to see him utilize that a little bit more. And he can be stout at the point of attack. I did see that from him as well. His weakness is inconsistent with everything. His bull rush, his swim move, his spin move, all of them are inconsistent. He doesn't use them enough. He doesn't time them up well. He doesn't use them at the right time. He's just inconsistent with all of those moves. And if he could just give me one of those that you become really consistent and good at, especially if you can make that swim move, that quick swim off the snap, your go-to move, and then off of it you counter with a spin, he'd be dangerous, because I see the quickness and it's elite. But at times, it's enough quickness there to really be impactful and scare, offensive linemen. But, it's just inconsistent. Not great at any one thing. Nothing stands out, because of the inconsistencies And that's probably why he never got a really fair shot at starting at Ohio State. Other guys were better and more consistent than he was. And so he was always just a platoon guy, always someone that was a backup that came in and gave you quality snaps, but never the guy because of those inconsistencies and none of his traits really standing out above the rest. And then sacks and pressures were oftentimes the talent and scheme around him. So he was really benefiting off of other guys that were really good around him, or they were scheming up stunts and twists. He does a really good job in the twist and stunt department. When he's looping around or he's taking on a couple of defenders to allow Chase Young to get free. The Indiana game is a great example. Chase Young ate and feasted in that game, and one of his sacks came up the middle on a looping twist inside, and Jashon Cornell went first, and he took up two guys, sacrificed himself for Chase Young, who comes in pretty much unabated to the quarterback, scot-free, gets the sack, and then, in returning a favor, he loops around and is able to get him a little sum, and he does a really good job at that. So a lot of his sacks and pressures, though, came off of either, Chase Young winning but not getting there and the quarterback stepping up into Jashon Cornell, or them twisting and stunting and he comes free and gets a free run at the quarterback. So he's got a little juice to him, but, nothing that gets you really excited, especially for a 7th-round pick. But those are the kind of guys you take in the 7th round, guys where you see a little bit of potential and maybe, a little bit of coaching goes a long way with a guy like Jashon Cornell. But in the 7th round, 235th pick overall, defensive lineman out of Ohio State, Jashon Cornell for me is a 2 to wrap up the Lions draft. So, solid draft for the Lions. I felt like they were so busy this offseason, and then they really focused in on specific positions and doubled up on those. You're going to have some receivers hitting free agency next year, Amendola and Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay. I don't see any way Kenny Golladay is going anywhere, but all of those guys are going to be free agents here shortly. So adding a guy like Quintez Cephus makes a ton of sense. And so, but outside of that, 2 running backs, 2 interior offensive linemen, 2 interior defensive linemen. So they had specific positions that they wanted to throw multiple darts at. They did that in this draft. What it equates to is a 3.22 draft for the Lions, which is really solid. And that equates to a B- on the grading scale. If you want to see my grading rubric, down in the description, along with the breakdown of the Lions score and how 3.22 was achieved. So solid draft for Bob Quinn and company. Really busy offseason. Let's see what this turns into for the Detroit Lions. Does it manifest itself into more wins in the left-hand column? That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Thank you for joining me on this breakdown of the Detroit Lions 2020 NFL Draft. If it's not me, your man Louie T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage. It could be. Until next time, you guys take care. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content and coverage. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Also, you can follow me on socials. That's a great way to keep up with what's going on here on the Louie T Network, at Louie T Network on Twitter, and also on IG, Louie T Network _. Till next time, you guys take it easy, stay safe, have a good one.